They say when a man falls in love, it happens all at once. One look, one moment, and he just knows. But that's not how it really works. The truth is, before a man ever lets those 3 words leave his lips, he walks through an invisible journey that most people never see. It's not a straight path. It's not simple or predictable. And it's rarely about the moment itself. It's about everything that comes before, the quiet battles, the silent fears, the slow unraveling of walls he didn't even know he'd built. Today, we're going deep inside that journey. The 5 hidden stages every man passes through before he finally looks at you and says, "I love you." These aren't the stages anyone talks about. They're the ones that happen in silence, in his thoughts, in the places he'll never admit out loud. But they shape everything. And understanding them changes the way you see not just him, but the entire dance of falling in love. Stage 1, the unexpected disruption. Love doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with clarity or certainty. For most men, it begins as something unexpected, almost inconvenient. A small interruption in the normal rhythm of life that refuses to fade away. This is the stage of disruption. The moment when something about her presence breaks through the noise of everything else. And he can't quite explain why. It starts subtly. Maybe it's the way she laughs at something no one else finds funny. Maybe it's how her voice sounds when she's passionate about an idea. Or maybe it's nothing he can point to at all, just a feeling, a pull, an awareness that settles in his chest and won't leave. He notices her in ways he doesn't notice other people. Not because he's trying to, but because something in him is already paying attention before his mind catches up. At this point, he's not thinking about love. He's not even thinking about a relationship. He's just aware that when she walks into a room, the energy shifts. Aware that her opinions linger in his thoughts longer than they should. Aware that he keeps finding reasons to be near her, to hear her speak, to see that particular expression she makes when she's truly listening. It's uncomfortable in the most compelling way. Like a song stuck in his head that he didn't choose but can't stop replaying. What makes this stage so powerful is that it catches him off guard. He wasn't looking for this. He might have been perfectly content in his routine, focused on his goals, maybe even convinced he didn't have space in his life for something new, and then she appeared, not demanding his attention, not trying to disrupt anything, just existing in a way that made everything else feel slightly less important. That disruption is where it all begins. During this time, he becomes hyper-aware of small details. The way she tucks her hair behind her ear when she's concentrating. How her mood changes the atmosphere around her. The specific words she chooses when she's trying to make a point. These observations aren't deliberate, they're automatic. His brain is already building a catalogue of who she is, piece by piece, moment by moment. And every new detail adds weight to the disruption she's caused. Men often resist this stage without realizing it. There's a part of him that wants to dismiss what he's feeling, to label it as attraction and nothing more, to convince himself it's temporary, that it'll pass if he just ignores it long enough. But the disruption doesn't fade. It grows, quietly, steadily, until ignoring it becomes impossible. That's when he knows something has shifted. When the thought of her isn't just pleasant anymore, it's necessary. This stage also brings a strange kind of restlessness. He might find himself distracted during conversations with other people, his mind wandering back to something she said days ago. He replays interactions in his head, analyzing small exchanges for hidden meaning. Did she smile because she was being polite, or was there something more? Does she think about him the way he's starting to think about her? These questions begin to occupy space in his consciousness, taking up residence without permission. What's interesting is how men hide this disruption from the world. They're skilled at keeping their internal chaos private. Outwardly, he seems normal, calm, collected. But inside, there's a quiet storm building. A growing awareness that this person has somehow become important in a way he didn't plan for and isn't entirely sure how to handle. That tension between what he feels and what he shows becomes the undercurrent of everything. The disruption stage matters because it plants the first seed, not of love, not yet, but of possibility. Of the idea that maybe, just maybe, this person could become something more than just another face in his life. It's the crack in the armor, the moment when his carefully guarded heart begins to consider opening, even just a little. And once that door is cracked open, there's no closing it completely. The disruption has already done its work. He starts to notice the absence. When she's not around, something feels off. Not dramatically wrong, but subtly incomplete. Like a room that's too quiet or a day that lacks color. Her presence has become a reference point, a marker of normalcy that he didn't realize he was building. And when it's missing, he feels the gap. That's when the disruption becomes undeniable. She's no longer just someone he's interested in. She's someone whose absence affects him. And that realization changes everything. Stage 2, the internal negotiation. After the disruption comes the negotiation. This is when his mind kicks into full gear, trying to make sense of what his heart is starting to feel. It's the stage where logic battles with emotion, where fear wrestles with desire, where he tries to convince himself he has control over something that's already slipping through his fingers. This is the longest, messiest, most complicated stage of all, because this is where he decides whether to move forward or pull back completely. The questions start flooding in. What am I really feeling? Is this just attraction or is it something deeper? Am I ready for this? Is she even interested? What if I open up and it all falls apart? These aren't casual thoughts, they're interrogations. His mind becomes a courtroom, presenting evidence for and against pursuing this connection. And he's both the prosecutor and the defense, arguing with himself day after day, sometimes moment after moment. This stage is exhausting for men because they're taught to have answers, to be decisive, to know what they want and go after it with confidence. But love doesn't work that way. Love is uncertain, is vulnerable. It demands leaps of faith and emotional risks that can't be calculated or controlled. So he finds himself stuck in this internal loop, trying to think his way through something that can only be felt. And the more he thinks, the more complicated it becomes. During this time, he starts studying her differently, not with the wonder of the first stage, but with scrutiny. He watches how she treats people when she's stressed. He notices how she responds to conflict. He pays attention to her values, her priorities, the way she talks about her past and her future. He's looking for clues, evidence that she's safe. That investing his emotions here won't end in disaster. Every interaction becomes a small test, a piece of data he files away in his ongoing evaluation. But he's not just evaluating her, he's evaluating himself. Can I be what she needs? Am I emotionally available right now? Do I have anything real to offer, or am I still carrying too much from before? He looks at his own history, his patterns, his wounds, the relationships that didn't work, the times he got hurt, the moments he hurt someone else. All of it comes rushing back, not as memories, but as warnings. Voices in his head telling him to be careful, to protect himself, to think twice before he lets this go any further. What makes this stage so difficult is the push and pull. One moment, he's convinced she's everything he's been looking for. He feels excited, hopeful, ready to take the next step. Then something shifts. A moment of doubt, a flash of fear, and suddenly he's pulling back, questioning everything, wondering if he's making a mistake. This isn't indecision, it's self-protection. He's trying to guard his heart while simultaneously wanting to give it away. And that contradiction creates chaos. This is also when men can seem confusing to the people around them. To her, his behavior might feel inconsistent. One day he's attentive, engaged, clearly interested. The next day he's distant, quieter, harder to read. She might wonder if she did something wrong or if he's losing interest, but the truth is he's just negotiating with himself, with his fears, with the possibility that caring this much might mean risking everything. And that negotiation doesn't follow a clean, predictable pattern. The internal negotiation stage is where many potential relationships die. Not because the feelings aren't real, but because the fear becomes louder than the hope. He talks himself out of it, convinces himself the timing is wrong, or that she's not quite right, or that he's not ready. He finds logical reasons to justify emotional avoidance. And sometimes he walks away from something that could have been beautiful simply because the negotiation never reached a conclusion. The questions never found answers, and the risk felt too great. But when this stage works, when he pushes through the noise and the fear and the endless analysis, something profound happens. He realizes that no amount of thinking will give him certainty. That love, real love, requires a choice made without guarantees. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, he starts to let go of the need for control. He stops trying to predict outcomes and starts accepting the present. That's when the negotiation finally ends. Not with a clear answer, but with a quiet surrender. A willingness to stop fighting what he feels and start trusting it instead. This stage teaches him something crucial. That loving someone isn't about having all the answers. It's about being brave enough to move forward without them. And when he finally accepts that, when he stops negotiating and starts feeling, everything changes. The chaos calms, the questions fade, and he's left with something clear and simple and true. He cares deeply. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough reason to keep going. Stage 3, the gradual surrender. There comes a point when resistance becomes exhausting, when the negotiation loses its power and something deeper takes over. This is the stage of surrender. Not a dramatic moment of giving up, but a slow, gentle release of the walls he's been holding up. It's when he stops fighting what he feels and starts living inside it. And that shift, subtle as it is, changes everything about how he shows up. Surrender doesn't mean weakness, it means acceptance. He's no longer trying to control the narrative or predict where this is going. He's just here, present, letting the connection unfold naturally. The questions that once dominated his thoughts begin to quiet. Not because he has answers, but because he's stopped demanding them. He's learning to exist in uncertainty. And in that space, something beautiful starts to grow. This is when his behavior shifts in noticeable ways. He becomes more consistent, more present. The distance that marked the negotiation stage starts to fade. He reaches out more often, he initiates conversations, he makes plans, not because he's forcing himself to, but because he genuinely wants to. Being around her stops feeling like a risk and starts feeling like a relief. A place where he can breathe easier, think clearer, be more himself than anywhere else. During this stage, vulnerability begins to show itself. Not in grand confessions, but in small, quiet moments. He shares things he doesn't usually share. Stories from his past. Fears about his future. Insecurities he's spent years hiding from everyone else. These aren't calculated revelations meant to deepen the bond. They're spontaneous, natural. He's not trying to open up. He's simply finding that around her, the walls come down on their own. And every time she responds with understanding instead of judgment, his trust deepens. Surrender also brings a shift in priorities. Things that once felt critically important start to matter less. Work doesn't consume him the way it did. His need for control in other areas of life loosens. He finds himself making space where there wasn't space before, rearranging his world to accommodate her presence without resentment or hesitation. Because she's no longer an addition to his life, she's becoming part of its foundation. And foundations don't compete for space. They just exist, solid and necessary. What makes this stage so powerful is the peace it brings. After the disruption and the chaos of negotiation, surrender feels like coming home. There's a calmness here, a sense that he's finally where he's supposed to be. He stops second-guessing every interaction, stops analyzing every word. He just experiences her, the way she laughs, the way she listens, the way she exists in his world without demanding anything, except honesty. And that simplicity is intoxicating. But surrender isn't without its own kind of fear. Because in letting go, he's also acknowledging how much power she has. The power to hurt him, to disappoint him, to leave. That awareness sits quietly in the background, a reminder that vulnerability and risk are inseparable. Yet he chooses to stay anyway. Not because he's certain nothing will go wrong, but because the connection they've built feels worth the risk. And that choice, made consciously and repeatedly, is what transforms attraction into something deeper. This stage is also where emotional intimacy truly begins. Not the surface level closeness of shared interests or physical attraction, but the deep soul level connection that comes from being truly seen. He lets her see the parts of himself he usually keeps hidden, the messy parts, the complicated parts, the parts he's not proud of. And when she doesn't run, when she stays and accepts him fully, something inside him settles. A voice that's been whispering doubts for years finally goes quiet. And in that silence, love finds room to grow. Surrender is the stage where he stops performing. He's no longer trying to be the best version of himself or hide his flaws behind charm and confidence. He's just himself, raw, imperfect human. And the relief of that is profound. For so long, he's carried the weight of expectations, internal and external, about who he should be. But with her, he can set that weight down. He can be tired, he can be uncertain, he can be afraid. And none of it makes him less worthy of her care. That realization is freedom. As this stage deepens, he begins to imagine a future, not in a controlling, planned out way, but in soft, hopeful glimpses. He pictures her in his life long term, wonders what it would be like to build something real together, to face challenges as a team, to celebrate victories knowing she's there. These thoughts don't scare him anymore. They excite him because surrender has taught him that the unknown isn't something to fear. It's something to explore together. Stage 4, the recognition. Somewhere in the middle of surrender, something crystallizes. A moment of clarity that cuts through everything else. This is the stage of recognition. When he finally sees what's been building all along and names it for what it is. Not attraction, not just deep care or affection. Love, real, undeniable, heart-deep love. And recognizing it changes him in ways he can't take back. Recognition doesn't always come as a lightning bolt. Sometimes it's quiet. A moment when he's watching her do something ordinary, making coffee or laughing at her own joke, and it hits him. This is the person. This is who I want. Not in some distant, abstract way, but right now, in this moment, in every moment after, the realization settles in his chest with weight and warmth, and suddenly everything that came before makes sense. The disruption, the negotiation, the surrender, all of it was leading here. Other times, recognition comes through contrast. Maybe he spends time apart from her and realizes how empty everything feels without her presence. Or he imagines his life continuing without her in it, and the thought feels unbearable, wrong, incomplete. The absence becomes the teacher, showing him exactly how much she's become woven into his daily existence, how much her presence has shifted from want to need, from preference to priority. This stage brings a strange mix of emotions. There's joy, certainly, the relief of finally understanding what he's been feeling, but there's also fear, because recognizing love means acknowledging vulnerability in its rawest form. He's no longer in control of his own happiness. Another person holds part of it now, and that's terrifying. It means potential pain exists in ways it didn't before, that losing her would hurt in ways he can't fully prepare for. That's the trade-off love demands, and he makes it willingly. During recognition, his entire internal narrative shifts. He stops asking if he should pursue this and starts asking how. The question is no longer whether she matters, but how to show her that she does, how to protect what they're building, how to be worthy of her trust. His focus moves from analysis to action, from questioning to planning, from possibility to intention. And that shift is what separates this stage from everything that came before. Recognition also brings acceptance of imperfection. He sees her flaws clearly now. The ways she's not perfect, not ideal, not everything some fantasy version of a partner might be. But instead of those flaws diminishing his feelings, they deepen them. Because he's not in love with an idea. He's in love with a real person. Someone complex and contradictory and beautifully human. And accepting all of that, choosing all of that, is what makes the love authentic. Is not blind. It's clear-eyed and intentional. This is when gratitude enters the picture. He feels thankful. Not in a surface way, but deeply, profoundly grateful that this person exists in his life. That somehow, against all odds, they found each other. That she chose to stay through the messy stages. That she gave him time to work through his fears. That she's still here, still present, still open. That gratitude becomes part of the foundation. A reminder that love isn't just something you feel. It's something you honor. Recognition often comes with a subtle panic. The realization that now he has to do something with this knowledge, he can't unknow it, can't pretend anymore. The next step is saying it out loud. And that thought is both exhilarating and absolutely terrifying. Because once words are spoken, they can't be taken back. They change the dynamic. They set expectations. They demand reciprocity or risk rejection. And suddenly, the safety of unspoken feelings feels very appealing. But recognition also brings courage. Because naming what he feels, even just to himself, is an act of bravery. It means admitting that someone else has become essential. That he's no longer self-sufficient in the way he once was. That he needs her in a way that makes him vulnerable. And accepting that need, embracing it rather than fighting it, requires strength. The kind of strength that comes not from independence, but from the willingness to be interdependent. This stage is shorter than the others, but it's the pivot point. Everything before was building toward this recognition. Everything after flows from it. It's the moment when internal feelings begin demanding external expression. When the private journey he's been on starts pressing toward public declaration, and he knows with absolute certainty that there's only one stage left, the one that terrifies him most. Stage 5, the preparation. Knowing he loves her and saying it out loud are two entirely different things. The final stage, before those words ever leave his lips, is preparation. And it's not what most people think. It's not about planning the perfect moment or rehearsing romantic speeches. It's about internal readiness, about making peace with vulnerability, about accepting that saying I love you is a risk that can't be calculated away, and that he's going to take it anyway. Preparation is emotional. He's preparing himself for exposure, for the moment when his heart is completely visible. When there's no more hiding behind humor or casual affection or carefully measured responses, I love you strips away all protection. It's an admission of need, of care, of commitment. And men know that once those words are spoken, the dynamic shifts. There's no going back to the safety of ambiguity. So he prepares himself for that shift, for whatever comes after. During this stage, he becomes hyper-aware of timing, not in a manipulative way, but in a meaningful one. He doesn't want to say it because he feels pressured. He doesn't want to say it in a moment that feels forced or obligatory. He wants it to be genuine, real, a natural overflow of what he's feeling rather than a strategic move. So he waits, not because he's unsure, but because he wants the moment to honor the magnitude of what he's feeling. And that waiting, that careful consideration is its own form of respect. He also prepares for possibility, the possibility that she might not say it back, that she might need more time, that the love might not be mutual yet, even though everything suggests it could be. That fear lives in his chest during this stage, a quiet companion to his certainty. He knows he can't control her response, can't guarantee reciprocity. And accepting that lack of control is part of the preparation, learning to say it anyway, even without knowing what comes next. Preparation also involves rehearsal, but not the kind you'd expect. He doesn't practice the words. He practices the courage. He imagines the moment, walks through it mentally, feels the nervousness, the vulnerability, the exposure, and he does it again and again until the fear loses some of its power, until he knows he can do it even if his voice shakes, even if the words don't come out perfectly, even if the whole thing feels terrifying. That mental rehearsal isn't about control, it's about commitment. This stage is where intention solidifies. He's not saying I love you to get something, not to move the relationship forward or to hear it back or to meet some unspoken expectation. He's saying it because it's true, because keeping it inside has become impossible, because she deserves to know that she's loved fully and completely, regardless of what she does with that information. That purity of intention is what makes the words meaningful. It's love as gift, not transaction. Men in this stage often become quieter, more thoughtful. There's a seriousness that settles over them, not heavy or dark, but weighty with importance. He's carrying something precious now, the knowledge of his own love. And he's preparing to hand it to her, to let her hold it, to trust her with the most vulnerable part of himself. That's not something you rush. That's not something you take lightly. So he moves through this stage with care, with reverence, with the understanding that what comes next will change everything. These 5 stages are never neat or clean. They overlap, circle back, move forward and backward. Every man experiences them differently, but they're always there in some form. The journey from first noticing someone to finally saying I love you is long and complicated and deeply personal. And understanding that journey doesn't make it any less mysterious. It just makes it more human, more real, and infinitely more worth the wait.